Now, so welcome everyone to Elderbeast Prevention Ontario's webinar today. Love can hurt more than your heart, how to avoid romance scams. And I'm so pleased today to be featured with our speaker with Detective Constable Kristin Thomas, who's with the Toronto Police Services and the Financial Crimes Unit and the Corporate Crimes Section. Before we begin, I'd like to provide our land acknowledgement for the day. We acknowledge that we gather on the traditional territory of a number of First Nations and acknowledge their stewardship of this land throughout the ages. We seek a new relationship with the original peoples of this land that is based in honor and respect. Thank you. Just a few housekeeping items that we want to cover before we begin. Everyone will be muted during the webinar today. Our speakers will be visible during the presentation today throughout the webinar, as well as at the question and answer period. As I mentioned, we have our ASL interpreters with us today, and you can pin the interpreters also on your screen if you want to make them larger and more visible for you. They have been spotlighted on the session today, so hopefully that makes a difference in terms of being able to see the ASL interpreters. And I did mention that you can make that screen larger by dragging the frame of the speakers and the presentation to the left to make that larger. You can post comments in the chat box as throughout the session, and please again put your question answers in the question box, and we will do the questions at the end of the webinar today. So we have a 1-hour presentation, and we'll spend the last 10-15 minutes doing questions with our speaker. We are recording the session, so we will post the recording on our website in the next few days. With the information and recording and any other materials that go with today's session for people to access. There will be an evaluation sent out after the presentation, so we do appreciate your feedback. If you take a few moments to answer that, we greatly appreciate it. And lastly, we do respect everyone's privacy and confidentiality, and we do understand that people may be having personal circumstances or issues that they may want to address in regards to the topic we're talking about. However, you know, our commitment is to make sure that we do respect your privacy and confidentiality. This is a public forum, and we encourage you, if you have something specific that you would like to address, our organization, our staff are here to assist after the webinar. Our contact information will be provided, and we encourage you to reach out to us to have more of a confidential conversation so we can assist you further. For those who are just joining us for the first time, Elderbeast Prevention Ontario is a nonprofit organization. We do many education sessions and outreach to our community stakeholders across the province and also across Canada, and partnerships that we forge through to try to protect the safety and security of residents. The work that we do is really making sure that seniors have a safe voice respected within Ontario, and that we can work towards preventing abuse to all seniors. We work collaboratively with our community partners to raise awareness. We do education sessions such as today's webinar. We work virtually due to COVID restrictions. We work with many community partners across Ontario and, as I said, across Canada to ensure we have better coordination and advocacy towards preventing the abuse of older adults. We implement Ontario's strategy to combat elder abuse. In 2003, our organization was given the mandate to implement this strategy. We have 3 main pillars that we fall under in terms of our work, which is public education awareness, training, and coordinating community services. So the work that we do encompasses this, and the many projects and initiatives fall under each of these domains, and you can find more information on our website at eapo.ca for further details around the work and projects that we've been involved in. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce our speaker today. Detective Constable Kristin Thomas. She has been employed with the Toronto Police Services for 23 years. She currently works out of the corporate crime section of the financial crimes unit. During her career, she was a primary response, she worked in the primary response unit at 53, 51, and 55 division. She's worked as a community response officer. She's worked in high school liaison for 11 high schools. She's also assisted in the roles of a criminal investigation officer and also in the division of fraud as an investigator. In 2019, she joined her unit and section that she currently works in, which is the corporate crime section. And she's extremely passionate about her role and work that she does. And in my conversations prior to this webinar, she has done a lot of experience and education to seniors on this topic and other frauds to seniors. So we are so pleased to have her here today to share her wealth of knowledge with us today. So Kristin.
Hi, good morning. Well, good afternoon. Again, I'm Detective Constable Kristin Thomas. It's really nice to be here, and thank you so much for allowing me to do this today. I am very passionate about these types of crimes, frauds, and specifically the ones against our seniors. I'm here today to talk about romance scams, especially this time of year, because they have been around for quite a long time. And they are evolving. And right now I've actually just begun a massive project that covers Canada-wide, where I've arrested somebody for a romance scam. So we thought it would be perfect to talk about that today. And I can only touch a little bit on my investigation, but then get into some of the things that is needed to know about romance scams and how to be vigilant and protect ourselves and our seniors. So I'll just get in right away to talking about my project. I'm not used to doing this type of presentation. I'm usually in front of a group. This is actually my first webinar, so you'll have to be kind and patient with me. I usually like it when I can engage with people. So it's going to be nice to answer some of your questions at the end, but I'm going to try and be talk as slow as I can, get through some of these things to make it interesting enough. And then at the end, hopefully we can talk about some stuff that maybe all of you would like to ask me questions about when it comes to these types of frauds. So my project is based on a romance scam. I made an arrest back in October of 2021. I believe some of you are actually from the areas of where I've put out a press release on this investigation. And it's specifically, I can use her name because it wasn't a press release, against a woman by the name of Aleth Duell. I have arrested her and charged her with multiple frauds and money laundering charges as a result of the investigation that led me to finding her doing romance scams throughout Canada. Through my investigation, I was able to establish that this hasn't just been going on for this past year. It's actually dating back as far as where I can lay charges for 2016, but it's probably predated that. But at this point, my investigation just revolves from 2016 to the present day. A lot of my victims, which unfortunately I can't get into too much background about my victims themselves, obviously, or their stories. I can just touch on some of the examples of why I had to charge Aleth. But some of my victims live in the Vancouver area. Some of them live in the Calgary area, as well as the GTA. And I was able to locate a lot of these victims through my press release after the arrest, as well as through some of the evidence of the money laundering. Getting into that part of it today would be a little hard. So I thought today I would just touch on why some of these victims were targeted, and so that we could get into some of the background of a romance scam. So the majority of my victims are seniors. A lot of them are widowers or never been married or married and divorced, but it always kind of revolved around loneliness, especially through COVID, being stuck at home. And with the way times are evolving and us learning how to be more tech savvy and online, a lot of my victims got caught into meeting people online. Some of my victims, it was a friendship that evolved into a romance. Some of my victims were looking for a romance because they were lonely. Some of my victims just happened to start talking to an individual, and over the couple of months of being as manipulated and massaged into this scheme, thought they were investing or in some type of business relationship that wasn't really romance, but they spoke so much every day that it was a little more than just a business relationship, and they ultimately ended up into being a victim of a romance scam. So I'm going to share my screen and talk about why my victims became victims in this. And then I'll finish off my presentation with my project again to kind of wrap it all up into this. So just bear with me while I try to share. Is that working? Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, it's coming up now.
Okay. All right. So what I started off with was some of my victims. So right now I can tell you I have about 12 victims. I know there's many more, but a lot of them won't come forward or haven't yet. But a lot of them started off with going online and, you know, getting involved in a widowers group or a dating website, or just simply being on Instagram or Facebook and chatting with random friends and developing friendships. A lot of these friendships clearly through Facebook and Instagram are through friends that we know and family members. But unfortunately, a lot of our predators can be friends of friends. And so unfortunately, some of my victims were actually reached out to by the suspect through the Instagram forum or the Facebook Messenger. Just started up a conversation with my victims. So right now, what I wanted to talk about was when you're online is how to be vigilant so that you don't become a target like my victims. Personal identifiers. A lot of us create profiles on our Instagram or our Facebook accounts using our real ages. Some even put where they're from. They may not necessarily put their whole address, but some do. So being vigilant means, why do we have to post our real age? Or why do we post our real birthday? I know a lot of us like to get our birthday wishes online, and we like to hear from friends and family, especially nowadays when we're doing this basically online anyway. We're meeting up with friends and family members and doing it this way through a forum of some sort. So we want them to know it's our birthday, especially if it's somebody that we don't necessarily see every day. But we try to tell you that posting your actual date of birth could be really dangerous when it comes to these predators, because now they've seen a post of happy birthday. And that could lure them into just simply sending you a quick message, whether you know them or not, saying, hey, Dorothy, happy birthday, starting up a conversation. And you may not know who this person is, but you might think, wow, well, they might know me because of somebody else or a friend of a friend. So you'll fire a message back and you'll say, thank you. And that's where it all begins. Okay. And they're very savvy and it's very sophisticated. They know how to continue that friendship or continue that conversation. Same with posting any kind of personal identifiers, like where you live or anything about your family, how many kids you have, your animals. One of my victims, she had a dog. It was just her and her dog, and she would take her dog walking every day. She had her birthday online as well as her dog's birthday. So this individual, she wasn't even part of a dating site. She wasn't even looking for any kind of a relationship. She just simply received a message from this person that said, hey, you know, I noticed that that it was your dog's birthday the other day. Happy birthday. And I can't use real names, of course, so we'll just say Rover for, you know, for the sake of it. Happy birthday to Rover. And looks like you walk in some lovely places. And this individual started sending her random photographs of himself walking his dog and connecting with her. And in the beginning, we all think, why would she talk to a stranger? But he came across as if he knew her, that it was through a friend, that he noticed her, he saw pictures and postings because he's a friend of a friend. And next thing you know it, they're having a conversation, and she stopped thinking about why she may or may not know this individual. She just enjoyed the company, and they had a friendship, and they began to talk. So you have to be really selective when you create your profile online, whether it's through your Facebook or Instagram or common sites a lot of people use. Also through some of these Christian groups, or if you're a widower and you want to just be part of a widowers group where you want to just be with a group of people who understand what you're going through. A reading group. There's everything out there online now. You can become like a reading club and meet people in a forum and read. Educational sessions where you start meeting a group every week because you're learning about something, like learning how to use a computer per se. Lots of people don't know how to do it. I know I can't. I know I have a hard time and struggles. So being part of a network of people who can answer my questions and meeting up with them once a week. These are all things that we're all doing nowadays. And these are the type of groups that these predators are targeting. Be mindful of announcements you make. Some of my, a couple of my victims, there was a death announcement, and it was because she lost the one victim had lost her husband, the other one had lost a son. So next thing you know it, she's being reached out to, of condolences, getting messages of condolences. One individual was actually part of a group that were taught, helping her through the grief process, and that's how she met the individual. So announcements, and I know we like to just put everything out there, but when you're doing this online, you're telling the world about yourself, and you're letting them learn about you simply by these small things that might not seem like a big deal to you, but it's painting a picture of who you are to somebody who could be a predator looking to get to know you quickly so they can start massaging you for some money. Photographs. Mindful of photographs, taking snapshots and selfies. We don't really think about in the moment when we're taking a selfie shot what's behind us. So you could have your car parked behind you with a license plate. So now they have access to finding out where you live, or even the number on your house behind you, your street or a store, different things like that. Nobody really thinks about those things when they're taking a selfie. So be mindful of that, because it's not only just to tell this person where you live, because in the end, when you're developing a relationship, you usually end up telling somebody where you live, but it's also giving them cues of how to get to know you better. You have a garden behind you, big, beautiful rose garden that you've planted that summer. And now all of a sudden this person's talking about how they love to go to, to the gardens to look at flowers, or they're part of a group who teaches them how to grow things better. It's just cues to give somebody to get to know you better. So as I said before, a lot of the sites being targeted, and with the victims that are part of my project, these were the main sites. I can't name specific dating sites because I could get in trouble for doing that, but I can tell you that dating sites in general, a lot of these sites are public. You can come in, you can be whoever you want on there. So they are a huge target for some of these predators. Christian and religion sites, which a lot of us would think, why would somebody do something like that? But again, it's a vulnerability, or it's something that you thrive on. It's your religion. So people who are predators are going to come in and start talking to you about that and educating themselves so they can start learning more, so they can start getting you to believe that that was their belief system too. And what more would you want than to have a partner or a friend who has the same type of background or beliefs as you? And I already mentioned the widow and widowers dating sites, or just groups in general. People getting together just to support one another. WhatsApp is another one. WhatsApp seems to be the common messenger that everybody has on their phones. I believe a lot of phones come with WhatsApp built right into them now. Messenger as well. And this is where the conversations will go back and forth on, which makes my job difficult as an investigator, because we can't get access to a lot of these messages once they're on some of these applications. Key flags to look for. So phishing, when you're sitting there and you all of a sudden you meet somebody for the first time, you created this profile, you're somebody who's lonely, you're on a dating site looking for friendship, and you've created this profile, and now all of a sudden you've met somebody that seems interesting enough, and they start asking you a lot of personal questions right from the moment you've met them. You're talking on the phone, or you're text messaging, or you're online talking to them online. And they're just over and over asking you, how many kids do you have? How many animals do you have? What is your religious beliefs? Just one after another. And I know that's kind of hard to talk about when you're thinking of meeting somebody new for the first time, because a lot of us want to get to know these things about one another. But when it's a really pushy situation where it feels like they really want to know everything about you all in one shot, like the first conversation, instead of that slow, steady pace, then sometimes that can be quite the flag. Lots in common, seems that everything you have in common. That's another way, especially for somebody who's lonely and vulnerable. Having somebody else who can share all the same things with you is something we all look for and celebrate at times. So this is something that, again, it's going to be difficult because we all think, how can you know if somebody's real or not? That's the problem with meeting people online, is that you don't. So these are some of the things you have to be a little more vigilant about. Meeting face-to-face is different. You meet somebody face-to-face, you can put that face to a name. They could lie to you about who they are, but meeting them in person, you have a better chance of reading those cues than to talk to somebody you've never met in person, talking to somebody who doesn't FaceTime or just wants to talk on the phone or message. And now all of a sudden they've got everything in common with you. They have all the same hobbies as you. Things just seem to be falling into place really quickly. These are huge flags when it comes to some of these situations, especially in romance scams. A lot of my victims, this was pretty much the same circumstance for all my victims. The person they've met lives in the same city, and usually within blocks of them. But this isn't true. They're just telling my victim, this is what they are. They live 2 blocks down, or they live within the same demographic. But they always work or have to be, whether it's employment, retirement, live in a different residence 6 months out of the year. But for some reason, there is not going to be a meetup face-to-face because they're across seas or in the USA. The big one is the oil rig. They're on an oil rig. Or they're on, they're somewhere across seas because they're on a ship somewhere. Okay. They're always traveling for work, and they're always away months at a time. There's always a reason why they cannot meet you face to face. And this also goes hand in hand as to why majority of my victims never met their predator face to face, even through FaceTime applications, because being across seas or being on an oil rig, there's a lot of what they'll say is a lot of internet static. They can't get a good connection. Talking on WhatsApp through data, or being able to talk on the phone and just hearing voices, just to have that little more of a personal connection, is how they would talk to the victims versus FaceTime. And not to say there wasn't FaceTime meets, because there was. It just was on the lesser end of it. There was only a small percentage of my victims that had an actual face-to-face meet with their predator. But in the end, it wasn't really the person they thought. It was actually somebody being paid to pretend to be that person. So as I touched on already, we're talking about never meeting that person. You will talk on the phone or text multiple times a day. There was an occasional FaceTime, but there was always excuses why it wouldn't work out, connection issues, etc. And they always sent lots of photographs. I can go online and I can choose as many photographs as I want. As you can see here on my slide, I don't know who any of these people are, but if I were to put this lovely picture right here of myself, would you know any different if you didn't meet me here today? I'm Detective Constable Kristin Thomas from Financial Crimes, and this is my profile picture. Would you know any different as to why this was or was not me? There's no way of knowing. We can cut and paste any public picture that's been put out there online when somebody has not put them in a private situation. The moment it's out there, and I can cut and paste anything I want into any kind of profile that I want. I can email this picture to someone or a friend and tell them that this is who I am. Any one of these 2 pictures I could email and say it's me, or my grandmother, or my sister. We are too quick to believe everything we see online. We're too quick to believe this is an actual human being that we're speaking to. This is just a tool that we're using to speak to people. It doesn't make these people real. So when you're communicating with these individuals, or my victims are communicating with these individuals, they'll be talking every single day. They'll be getting tons and tons of emails. You're wonderful. I love talking to you for hours last night. Lots of text messages. You're so beautiful. I love looking at all of those pictures you post. I love seeing you walk your dog. You live in such a gorgeous place. Lots of attention, lots and lots of attention, to the point where it's almost overwhelming how wonderful things are. And then you get a ton of photographs. And I can't post the photographs to show you as an example today because that would hurt my case. But almost every single one of my victims had multiple photographs, all different photographs. None of them had the same picture of the same person being sent to them. Each individual had multiple photographs of the same person, obviously. So this is me up here sending tons and tons of photographs of this female right here, doing all kinds of things, standing by her car, on a trip on the beach, doing all kinds of lovely, lovely things, but sending them constantly to the victim, pretending that that is me. And that's what the predator is doing, sending tons and tons of photographs of one person doing all kinds of activities. And that eventually your victim believes, or right off the get-go, because they're talking already, believes that's who she's speaking to. She's now put a face to the name. So just for pretend, it's not any real name that's been in my project, but to say it's Brian. So now Brian has sent all these pictures, and now this is what Brian looks like. This mail that's been sent to my victim, and she's got all these different pictures that she's saving on her computer, and now that's Brian. And that makes it feel real. And now this is the fraud alert. I can tell you all of my victims up to this point have all had the same story. There's one way or the other. The one way is this way, which I'm going to explain right now. They've been talking every single day, 2 to 3 times a day, sometimes more, on the phone, text messaging, messenger, any way they possibly can. And now 2-3 months in, because it's never right away. I've never had one victim say within 24 hours. We're talking 2 to 3 months, because my predator, my suspect, this is a job. They're being paid to do this. So this isn't a person that they actually love or care about. They're getting up every day and doing this and being paid for it. They don't care about the person. They don't care about the victim. All they care about is getting paid. So they're calling every day because they know that they're getting paid to call this person and pretend to be somebody they're not, so they can make good money out of it. And now it's time. It's time to start making the money, because they haven't been paid yet, but now it's time to make the money. So they've now called up Dorothy and said, oh, I had the worst accident yesterday at work. There was this accident on the oil rig that hurt somebody else, and they're blaming me. And now I have to pay for the equipment. But my money's been tied up. I can't get my money because I'm on this oil rig, and I can't get in touch with the manager at TD. And I don't know what I'm going to do, because you can't call for me, because it has to be me. So I need you to send me the money, and I promise I'll pay you back. I promise I've got the money in the account. And a lot of my victims up to this point have already started talking, especially the ones that are in the romance, have already started talking about having a future with Brian. And now they're going to be getting a house with Brian or moving in with Brian. And they believe that Brian has all this money, is going to be retiring soon. And they believe everything Brian's told them up to this point. So why wouldn't they try to help Brian out? Because Brian's now made this huge ordeal up. He's giving them all kinds of reasons. Oh, my manager's going to send you a bill for the equipment. He'll contact you. There's a courier they're going to put you into contact with that's going to help you get the money to me. You got to do this for me, baby. I love you. Or you're my best friend. I only can rely on you to help me out. And I need the money right now. And you can't tell anybody, because this is embarrassing. I don't want anybody to know that I have to borrow this kind of money off you. And we're talking, thousands of dollars. Some of my victims only had about $5,000 to $10,000 in their accounts, up in their name, and they sent it. It's all they had. So the only savings. Some of my victims have their lifelong savings. Some of my victims pulled all of their savings, their pensions. One victim even took out a loan on their property, had a mortgage-free home, and took out another mortgage. $300,000, $150,000, $20,000. It doesn't matter what the number is. It's just the money is leaving the account. And a lot of us would gasp when we hear one of my victims lost over $1 million. And we gasp. We think, how could you send so much money? But these predators are so sophisticated, and they have made this person believe they're going to get paid back. They believe that this person loves them, is going to spend the rest of their life with them. They believe that they've bought a house or they're getting a house and they're going to be moving. One of my victims is going to be moving into a new home, let's say out in the BC area with this person. So why wouldn't they help them out? This is going to be a life partner, and they're feeling so alone. So now the money starts going out the door. The second side of this, before I tell you what happens with that money, there's another way. Too good to be true way. So you have your trauma, your accident, everything's terrible. Or you have, I have a gift and I'm sending it to you. I'm going to send you this gift, and there's going to be a courier that's going to call you, and it's going to come right to your home. And they say it's going to be money or it's going to be something that's a surprise. But all I need you to do is cover the courier cost. It might be $100, it might be $1,000, but you're going to get something big. And now all of a sudden, they get a phone call from the government saying, things are tied up. You need a certificate in order to get this money into the country because they're across seas. Or you get a phone call from Border Services telling you that it's tied up at the border. I know everybody in this forum have all probably got that phone call because I get them multiple times a day. Border Services, they're calling me to tell me that I'm going to be arrested. There's a warrant out for my arrest because my parcel's tied up and there's something illegal in it. Well, we all know, most of us don't even have a parcel. Some of you may have been caught for a second thinking about that Amazon package you ordered or the Shein clothes that I know that my kids have ordered. And I think, is this possible? And then you realize, what am I thinking? You hang up the phone. That's exactly what this is like. This is a person that they love that's now sending them a monetary gift or a big, big, big surprise. And now they get a phone call from whom they believe is Border Services because it's tied up at the border. And the only way it's going to come across is if they pay the fee. And then one of my victims reaches out to say, you need to pay for this because it's not coming over. And now we're back to the first scenario. Well, my money's tied up. I can't get, this is for you and you're going to get paid back with what I'm sending you. And this is an amazing gift and it's for you. Or the scenario is, I'm sending a parcel on behalf of my friend and it has to come to you because my house nobody's living in right now. Or I sold my house because I'm moving in with you. So it has to come to you and you need to pay because I'm not going to get the money there on time. You need to pay for me because we love each other and we're going to spend the rest of our lives together. There's all different scenarios that you can read through. And that some of my victims who to this day will tell me that it wasn't a romance, that it was a business relationship, who fell into the same trap. It was good investment. It was a good opportunity. They're getting something sent to them and they're supposed to send it off to somebody else and they're supposed to keep part of it. There's so many different scenarios that I could talk about today. And it's really difficult to get into it all because it's almost like a spider web. I talk about one which leads to another. And there's so many different elaborate ways of getting money out of somebody, but it's just lies. All of it's lies. And that's what it boils down to. Whether it's the traumatic lie or this type of lie, most of these frauds and scams are all very similar. They need the money now, now, now. And the only way you're going to get the money is usually through transfers. They need cash. Sometimes they want you to send cash, but they're always going to tell you the money's tied up. And it's always large sums of money. It's never usually small. And if it's small, $5,000 is not small to me. But to these individuals trying to take your money, it is. So then they'll keep telling you, oh, the money didn't arrive or the transfer didn't go through. So now you sent another 5,000 or you borrow 5,000 from somebody else and you send that again. And there's always these different reasons, which I've already touched upon. Money laundering, you've been caught for money laundering. So now you're going to be in trouble. You're going to get arrested and charged for the money coming across the border. So you're now afraid to call the police, which is one big one for a lot of my victims. Similar facts on all this to kind of go over everything. All of these relationships usually start with a friendship. Every day, there's lots and lots of conversations and you talk constantly. And there's always a lot that you have in common. I can tell you 1%, that's only my own. It didn't come from a specific statistic, but I can tell you of my victims, and I've been doing frauds for a long time. I've not only worked with Financial Crimes Unit, I've also worked in a divisional fraud office for many years, and I've done a lot of different romance scams. And I can tell you, majority of the ones that I've investigated, they've never met the individual in person. There's only ever pictures exchanged, emails, texts, or phone calls. The person always lives somewhere or works somewhere else or lives somewhere else is moving here. There's always some reason why they can't meet. Tons and tons of grooming. And then there's always an incident why they need money. One of my victims, one of the excuses was that this person came down with COVID and they were in the hospital. And somebody called the victim saying they were the doctor there and that they had to pay for the medical bills and that their love of their life that they've been talking to every day for months was intubated. And now she was listed as the person that needed to be contacted, and she needed to send the money for the bills. It's just, it's ridiculous, some of the ways that they get people coming to send money. You're always going to get paid back. You're going to get some type of gift or monetary gain. And then again, I keep repeating is that there's lots of reasons why that the money never was received on the other end. That's how they continually get more money out of our victims. There's always a reason why more money needs to be sent. You start off with one bit amount, and then you end up with another and another and another. And sometimes we look at, this situation and we think, I would never do that. But none of us have ever been in this situation, I hope. And when we have, we don't know how we're going to react, especially if we believe this person's who they are and we've had a friendship or a relationship with them for months. What to do next? So when it comes to our seniors, to get into this type of thing, I was pretty shocked with my project because some of my seniors didn't even come forward even after I found out who they were. I found out some extra people or extra victims out there, and I reached out to family members. I tried getting them to come forward, and they wouldn't come forward, even though they knew that they had lost, thousands and thousands of dollars. Some of them lost. One of these individuals was actually living with her daughter because she lost everything, and she still didn't want to come forward. And the problem is there's shame, there's guilt, they feel stupid. Sometimes they lose friendships or family members because everybody at some point will look at something on the news or hear stories like this and they think, man, oh man, like how stupid can that person be? Why would they send that kind of money to someone? And that alone right there is why we have victims. Why we don't get these things reported is when we hear people say things like that. Nobody here knows how they're going to react unless they've walked a mile in someone's shoes. And unfortunately, when you're somebody who's vulnerable because you're lonely or because, you've had so much stuff in your life and now you finally found somebody that you truly believe is in love with you, you don't know what you're capable of. There's so many other reasons why. These ladies, most majority, I have not had a man, but I know there is males out there who are victims. But these ladies all believed in something and thought it was real. So there's no reason why we should make them feel shame, guilt, or tell them that they're stupid because they sent all their money. But unfortunately, a lot of my victims feel that way. Even after I've come in and tried to help out or heard about, some of the other investigators that I work with who've got multiple victims as well, they always end up ultimately saying how stupid they are during their statements in person. They always tell, I have heard time and time again, I'm so stupid, I'm so stupid. And I keep saying, no, you're not. And that's why we never usually get these things reported or people come through. So we need to come together, especially if we know a loved one or a friend has somebody who's senior or vulnerable, and tell them, please, you need to report this to the police. It's the only way we're going to get these people caught. It needs to be reported. Families and friends need to be supportive. We can't be telling our parents or aunts or uncles or even our friends for that matter, who are the same age or older, that they're dumb for losing their money and they're never going to get their money back. Using that kind of language isn't going to help them try and get some help or to report it to the police because now they're embarrassed. They don't want anybody to even know that they fall victim to something like this. Don't go through this alone. You can't go through this alone. You have to get support. Even if you don't want to report it to the police, you still need to have support through this because this is probably one of the most traumatic things that could happen to you, especially if you've lost so much money. And the one big thing here, which it's horrific, is some of my victims became multiple victims even after they reported it to the police and fell for it again because they felt there was a possibility they could get their money back. So it is extremely important to tell them never to call this person back or answer any more of their texts or messages. Because even though we know that they know that this person is a fraud, at the end of the day, they've been manipulated so much that some of my victims, it happened again to them by the same person, and they still end up sending more money because they have hope. They have hope that there's a possibility it is really true and that they did something wrong by calling the police and they might just get their money back. And it just sounds crazy to people who wouldn't do something like that, but it happens. It really does happen. So just to touch on again, the common reason why we don't get a lot of these things reported is pride, shame, guilt, lack of support, made to feel it's your fault. You're worried that you'll lose your friends and family or lose your biggest support because they know that you've sent all your money. And like I just said, you may still believe that it's true. You're worried about the monetary loss. You're worried about all that money that you've just sent to this person. So there's still a little bit of hope or glimmer inside that you might get it back, because that's a lot of money. So what it comes down to, that's sad and it's true. I don't know if anybody knows what catfishing means. Okay. It's to pretend to be somebody that you're not by posting false information. And that's how a lot of our victims are caught, because of all the false information on the internet when these profiles are created by these individuals who are predators. And unfortunately, what's sad and true is that makes my job a lot harder too. Trying to identify this person or this group. Coming back to my project, I arrested Alec Duell. She is one person of a massive organized group who are doing this fraud. And I got one person out of all of it. I know that she's part of the bigger scheme. I'm thankful that I was able to stop her because she's been doing it for so long. I know why I didn't have her caught sooner is because a lot of the victims were too afraid to come forward. But to get Alec Duell identified was out of luck. It was because she made a mistake. She was doing it for years before we were able to catch her. We didn't even know she existed until we caught her. So identifying the person or group is very difficult for us, because just like yourselves, when I tell you that you can be whoever you want online, you can create whatever profile, you can create whatever you want. I won't get into the background of things of how we investigate things online, but it's very difficult, very difficult. Most of the money that our victims have given these people, it's gone. Everybody thinks it's so easy and say, okay, go to the bank, get the money back from the other account it went through. Or why can't you just take the money back from them? I can't take any money back. I'm there to lay the criminal charge. I have to get a conviction, which could take years in court before I can get a conviction to even begin to try and get some money back for our victims. So the money's gone. We don't even have a chance to take the money back. The money bounces through accounts, many, many accounts. And chances are those accounts are other victims of either A, the same type of fraud, or B, they're a victim of a different, completely different fraud by the same group. It's just too complicated to get into with people, and they don't understand that when you lose that kind of money, your money is generally gone. And we're not investigating to get the money back. We hope we can get the money back. We're just trying to catch the people who did it so we can get a criminal charge and we can stop them in their tracks and get them convicted. So to finalize that, the sad but true part is, yes, I have many victims of this romance scam, and a lot of my victims have never seen a penny back. So you think, why go to the police then? Why do you report it? It's the only way we can stop them so that there aren't any more victims losing more money. And why, as a family or friends or a group or network, need to be there to support individuals who are vulnerable or senior falling into this, is so that it doesn't continue to happen again as well. It's the only way that we're going to stop these predators from coming after anybody, for that matter, because it's not just seniors being affected by this scheme. It just happens to be more victims who are in the senior category of this type of fraud. And it's really unfortunate. So if you have any questions, I know it's kind of a different way of presenting. I'd love to answer them. And again, if you have anything you want to ask me about this that you want me to elaborate on, I'd be more than happy to. I can't hear you.
Sorry. Thank you so much for your presentation. It was very interesting. I was taking notes just on some of the tactics that scammers use. We do have a few questions that people have asked that are really good. So I will start. I'll just go from the ones that have been posted. Said, I see a lot of people doing those fun games, and I'm concerned about how much information is given. Are these dangerous as our data? As other data, since they seem to be so transient? So maybe online games that they're talking about, that maybe you put in your information or your contact, quizzes that might pop up on Facebook, those kind of things.
So yes, so it's hard to explain that. So are you talking about the gaming network with kids? Is that what we're trying to elaborate on?
I'm not sure. Maybe the person who wrote that can maybe give some further explanation. We can come back to that. So I'll just ask Miss the person, the last name is Reed, to explain that a little bit further. The other question is online any different than meeting someone at a bar or on a dating site? It is more of a one-on-one in real life as opposed to talking to online. So, meeting someone at a bar versus someone online, are there any differences around that?
Well, the difference is that online, we have way more victims, because online you can be whoever you want. And same, I know what you're saying. So you meet somebody in a bar, I could tell you I'm a completely different person in a bar, but you physically have met me and you're going to have to see me every day. You're going to have to, get to know me every day in person. Maybe I meet you once on, in person, and then after that, talk to you constantly. And that would be a completely different, question. It's possible both ways. Okay. It's possible to have somebody come to you, pretend to be a completely different person and meet you in person, but there's better chances of you falling victim to this from somebody who's met you online, because it's a lot harder to pull it off in person than online.
Right.
Does that answer the question?
Yeah. And the other question was, what happens once someone calls the police? Do they contact the scammer right away, or what's the process that you go through to investigate?
Okay, so thank you for reminding me, because I was going to touch about that at the end, but I noticed I was running out of time, so I stopped. Okay, so the process is to report it. So you right out of the gate, you report it with as much detail as possible. Unfortunately, as I've mentioned, you can be whoever you want online. So you're going to give the police the dating sites or whatever sites that you were on, whether it's dating, Facebook, Instagram. You want to make sure that you have all their handles, their emails, their text messages. You're going to give the police all of that. My job is to take all of that, and as a divisional, when you report it to the police, it goes to a divisional level first, because most of the stations are equipped with a fraud officer. I was one of those for many years. I would take a look at that information, and unfortunately, being that you can create fake emails, they're real emails, but under a completely different, so that you don't get caught. I'm not going to get into all the tech side of things that just take too long. So now I have to, as an investigator, I have to start writing search warrants. I have to start writing warrants to Facebook, Instagram, because I'm not allowed just to call them up and say, okay, so this Facebook account belongs to Julie. So can I please get all of her information? They're not going to give that to me. I have to write a warrant. So it just starts, there's a step-by-step process. And being that you can be whoever you want online, that just leads to, a lot of different ghost accounts. You can walk into cafes, you can use Wi-Fi to create accounts. There's a lot behind the scenes that has to happen in order to identify the real person that you have met. Okay. And it's very difficult.
Because there was one question about, should a person save like text messages or emails, that kind of thing. So I think you just answered that question as well.
Everything, because the text messages come from phone numbers, but there are phone numbers that we can call people through the computer now. We can call people through applications you get on your phone. You can even call somebody or text message through applications on a phone that only use data. So to get into the tech side, again, I might lose a few people, but for me as an investigator, I'm not going to get to see any of that. Even when I write warrants, we don't get that stuff. So unfortunately, these are the kind of things that make life difficult. We can eventually down the road get it, but it takes a long time. And by that point, we may not end up with the real individual. There's a lot behind the scenes that has to happen. Okay. So that's when you are a victim to this, or you have somebody that that is, giving the police everything you can and saving everything, even the pictures, because those pictures had to have come from somewhere. They may not have been the individual, but that picture was taken somewhere. So now it's up to my tech crimes to find out where that picture was taken and how that picture was posted. And then that way can hopefully lead to the person who used it. Okay.
And as for those people that you're investigating, is there any specific criminal code violations for romance scams? Mm-hmm. And is there what's the best way to explain this type of crime to the police when you're making a complaint?
First off, when you've been caught in the situation where you've been dating somebody or believe you're in a romantic relationship or even just a friendship, you can call it a romance scam or just a fraud, because that's what this is. Ultimately, my charge that I'd be laying is fraud under or fraud over. Fraud under is anything under 5,000. Fraud over is anything over 5,000. So if they took you for 5,000 and over, I would be laying a charge of fraud over. The money laundering comes in where I'm able to see where your money went. So you've sent them money, and now I have to see where that money went and how it was used. And it would have to be the suspect using that money, or the accused, the person that we've caught. And that's for the money laundering, where that money went through, how it was processed, how it was used. And I saw some questions. Go ahead.
And how many, what's the percentage of people actually arrested in these type of scams?
Pardon, sorry?
The percentage that actually get arrested or charged?
The person who actually,
No, the percentage, like how often are the people, sorry.
I don't have statistics. You know, I wish I could give that percentage. Again, I'm working in an investigative situation right now. I'm not the backbone, like the people in communications, the people doing that kind of thing. I'm only speaking to my own personal experience. And I can tell you this one, I got lucky, but out of all of the ones that I've had, I could say out of 10, I may have caught 4 people out of 10. So my own percentage would be maybe 30%, but I can't speak to that because that's not the proper statistic.
Yeah. And is there any work being done from a policing perspective to train banks around this? Because many people, as we know, will go and ask for, money orders or money transfers or large withdrawals of finances, and banks will question, because I've had experiences in the past where that's happened, just informing the bank. So I don't know if you can speak to that, if police have done any of that work.
There's constantly relationships built with the banks. We work with the banks regularly, so they are aware, but unfortunately you do have multiple banks, multiple employees. So it's a matter of the training inside the banks themselves with their employees. We often ask that question as to why is, as you know, an example, Dorothy walking in, who's been someone coming to that bank for 30, 40 plus years, able to get a draft for $150,000 when she's never ever done that before in all the years she's been banking there, and walk away without anybody asking her a few questions. So that is something we regularly will say in our, while we're dealing with our victims. But unfortunately, the banks are in the same boat as we are, and you, where there's all those little things that slip through the cracks because we're not perfect. And unfortunately, no bank is perfect, and they are doing whatever they can to get the word out there to their employees as well. But it all depends on the actual person that day and how they're working with their client and whether they're going to catch something like this.
There's a really good comment here and a question. So how do you convince an older adult who might be a victim, or you perceive to be a victim of a romance scam, and they think this is a legitimate relationship that they're in and they don't believe it? And I know I've had that many times, and the person has had visits from officers and they still believe it's true. So do you have any suggestions for friends or colleagues of how to talk to a senior about that this is not real?
Okay, so there's been, even myself have fallen into this category, especially with the investigation I'm doing right now, being persistent, but then you don't want to be the bully in the end, because this person's being bullied, even though they don't realize it, by the person they're in a romantic relationship with. So you start off by trying really hard, showing them the proof by these type of presentations. Then if you're not a family member, I would try and get in touch with a family member, try to find out who you can reach out to that's more supportive on that end of thing, that could possibly get their loved one to a doctor or to somebody who can reason with them, or even their bank. I know it took one of my victims, their child took them to the bank to sit down with a manager there to help convince her and to show her her account and the money leaving and telling her how she's not going to get her money back. So there's really no way of there's so many things you could say to somebody, doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to believe you. And sometimes they're going to have to hit rock bottom to come back up. So it's just unfortunate. You just have to be persistent. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah. Just kind of going through here. So the question was around the case that you were dealing with. Was the woman you arrested scamming both men and women?
At this point,
you can only speak so much to that case, but
I only can speak so much. I'm not going to say there hasn't been any men, because there could have been, but right now all my victims ultimately are women. And it has gone on for multiple years. And we predominantly have had victims come from the Vancouver area and the Calgary area there, GTA as well. But unfortunately, there are a lot of other victims out there that either A, we don't know about, or B, aren't coming forward. So it's a higher percentage of women that get caught up in this. I don't know, I don't know why, but there are definitely men who are affected by this as well. It could go one way or the other.
One of the questions also is who makes the report. So if I know my neighbor is being, in a romance scam, if I report it, would you investigate that, or does it have to be the senior themselves that comes forward as the victim?
So this kind of covers off even the last question. So we can't process a third-party complaint. We can look at it. If I were to be in a divisional position, and which I have had this happen, like with nursing homes and so on and so forth, and they're concerned about a resident, or they're concerned about a loved one, but this person will come forward and they put a report in on their behalf. Somebody who's in this position should make a phone call to the family or to that person, to that who they believe is a victim, and also to any supporting groups, Senior Link, different groups that can maybe get involved. We do have officers who specifically go to homes and work in the community and go in uniform and talk to anybody they believe is vulnerable or in this type of situation. So you would hand that report to that officer to cover off, to go speak to this person that they're worried about in person and look at their situation to see if there's anything else that we need to do on our end to help them. It's just doing everything you can. I cannot charge anybody on a third-party complaint. I need to have a victim. So that person that they believe is being, targeted needs to provide me a statement and come forward. They have to want me to lay a charge. I can't just lay a charge and not have somebody come to court and be a victim. It just doesn't work that way. Okay. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah. And that was one of the other questions about the victim testifying. I mean, you have to have that information from that person, right? The one question that we started off with was that the person's on Facebook and they get catfished, where they'll have pop-ups about what's your favorite animal or something that comes up. Is that a way that people get pulled into? And is there any work being done with Facebook to sort of limit some of this romance scam that's going on?
100%, that's one way, because some of my victims did in fact get, grabbed through that type of situation. Facebook's fully aware. We can only do so much. We do put in, even our victims or victim family members and ourselves, Facebook will take something down or do their own internal investigation. We do what we can on our end. We don't work for them. They've got their own policies in place. And we would hope that which we feel they are, because they're our partners too. They work with us, they help us. We again have to, legally do things by way of warrant, but we've never had a problem with Facebook taking sites down or doing their own internal investigation to assist us with ours.
And then just to wrap up, because I know we're just getting short on time, just in terms of reference for working collaboration with the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre, and I do have a couple slides on the Equifax that you had referred to before we started the presentation. So perhaps you could just speak to those two, and then I'll provide the conclusion slides.
Okay, so for Equifax and Transunion, to try and do this as quickly as I can without losing you, we go to the doctor every year and we get a physical done. So our doctors have our file that we never look at, we never read, but it stays with us for life. The moment we go to that doctor's office, that's your medical records. We also have financial records. Okay, our financial records are the exact same thing. The moment you get your credit cards, your loans, or anything under your name, and the keepers are the doctors of our financials is Equifax and Transunion. There's a lot of smaller companies that pay them to pull our credit bureaus, but they're the ones that keep our financial record. And that financial record is with us for life. So you always hear, call Equifax or Transunion when you think there's a problem, or when you want to get your credit score. So if you think you're a victim of any kind of fraud, identity theft, anything to do with yourself and your personal particulars, you yourself need to contact Equifax and Transunion and first tell them you're a victim of fraud. And then you need to look at your entire bureau report. Equifax gives one free report a year. I believe they still do. Transunion, I don't believe do. You do have to pay for a report, but if you're a victim of fraud, I'll tell you right now, chances of just having to pay for it once will put you at peace of mind, because the moment you look at that report, Both Transunion and Equifax have the exact same credit score, an exact same financial report when it comes to your profile, who you are, where you live, your phone numbers. What's going to be different on their reports are the inquiries. So if somebody's got your name and information and trying to get a loan in your name, they may use Equifax to pull a credit bureau, or they may use Transunion. So that's going to be the only difference. So any company out there that's a loan type company for any kind of financial situation, credit cards, cars, you name it, phones, they do soft credit checks. Anytime they want to pull a credit bureau so that they can decide whether or not you're worthy, that lands on your financial credit bureau. And that's going to be the only information that's different on those credit bureaus, those reports. So if you think you're a victim, that's the section you need to look at, because the moment you look at your report and you haven't gotten a credit card in 10 or 20 years, or you haven't gone for a loan in 10 or 20 years, there should be nothing in that section. And if you go into that section, see multiple company names with phone numbers, then you know you're a victim of fraud. So we tell everybody to notify them, because then they'll lock it up so that nobody can pull a credit bureau on you. And then you'll also know what kind of victim you are, whether you're an actual victim or if they've actually gotten your information or not.
Okay.
I hope that makes sense. I was
Yeah.
trying to do that.
And then just reporting to the Anti-Fraud Center.
Again, same thing, you reporting to them, because they are also the keepers of our statistics, and they also can marry you up with any service or anything out there that's ongoing, like my project per se.
Great. And then just, I just have a couple slides just to reinforce that in terms of, calling your local police, no matter, because we do have people from all over Ontario and different jurisdictions. So please report that, and the Anti-Fraud Center as well. You can call anonymously the Crime Stoppers. They, if you know somebody who's a victim or any situation of abuse that you're concerned about someone, you can report that anonymously if you feel you don't want to come forward. Here are the phone numbers and emails for Equifax and Transunion, as Kristin had alluded to. And they have lots of information on their website. We do have a website that has a lot of information, and I know my colleague Laura was posting the brochures that we have on frauds and scams, some new ones that we've developed. We will put those in on when I post the recording onto the website. I will attach those so people have them handy, that you can just download them when they're available. We do have, these are just two of the new resources on scams and financial abuse. We do also have a directory of resources, that provincial directory, that you can look up information. You can all these are downloadable onto the website as well. And as I mentioned, we do have a new website that's a little easier to navigate and find resources and information. So I encourage you to have a look, see what's new, and check us out. We have a lot of interesting webinars in keeping with the theme around financial scams and abuse. We have 2 sessions next week on income tax credits. We did this last year. There's new benefits that are available for seniors. So we have this in both English and French next week. And as we approach Fraud Prevention Month, which is next in the month of February, we're launching that and following up with the romance scam with the grandparent scam. So the 2 officers from Durham and York will be speaking on the grandparent scam, and alluding also to the new cryptocurrency that people are using, as the scammers are using to defraud people. So they'll be talking about those issues. So please sign up. Just getting everything posted onto our website with the links where you can get signed up for that. We're also talking about the home share program. We have one on seniors bullying as well. So just if you're on our mailing list, you'll get information about all these upcoming events. We will be sending out a short evaluation. If you don't mind, just putting your comments. We'd appreciate that. This is our contact information. If you have further questions or want further information, you can please reach out to us either by email, or you can contact us by our website as well. We do appreciate your time today. I'm sorry we went over a couple minutes. Thank you again, Kristin, for sharing your wealth of knowledge and information. There was so many great questions today. I'm sorry we didn't get to everything, but we will continue to have these webinars on these topics, because I think, unfortunately, they're and everyone can be affected. And we find primarily, as Kristin said, seniors seem to be the main target. We want to prevent that from happening to older adults. So thank you again, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody, for allowing me to do this today.
Thank you.